Welcome to One World Countless Story podcast with me, Selena Novello. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for all of the support that you have given me so far. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Today I interviewed Jessica and I'm going to be sharing another episode from the One World Countless Story podcast, which I am so excited about. Her interview is so inspiring and we talk about her life, but she also gives us really concrete things that we can apply to our own lives, and also just reminds us that we're not alone in our feelings of being judged by others, trying to be perfect, and so many more things. It was such an amazing conversation, so let's get into it.
Sure, my name is Jessica Velazquez. I guess the first thing I should say is that I'm from Panama. I'm originally from this small country in Central America, and I have a very diverse background because my grandfather was from China. I have relatives or ancestors, I should say, that are from Spain, that have Black or Afro-Caribbean, indigenous, so I'm a mix of different cultures. And I grew up in Panama until I was 19 when I moved to Toronto to study interior design. There I met my husband and we've been married for 30 years now. We have 5 children and we've lived in 3 different countries. We've lived in Canada, in the States, and in Panama. We currently live in Calgary, so we've been here for 10 years, but we've lived in Toronto, Ottawa, and Calgary, Utah, in the States, and Panama. So my children have been raised, exposed to different cultures and both languages. I think that has enriched our lives. And now I'm an interior designer. I have a real estate background, and I combine that with my interior design studies. So I offer my services specifically, to everyone, but my primary message is for first-time homeowners with big dreams and small pockets.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Oh my goodness. Your life just sounds so amazing in all the places that you've been and lived in. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. Do you want to talk about some of the, good parts and bad parts about, traveling so much and living in different places?
I would love to. I think when I first moved to Canada, I was 19, and I always tell this story because it's very telling of what we assume when we live in a country, what we take for granted, and what other people may feel or have lived or experienced when they come to our country, our environment, or where we're at. So picture this, I'm 19, had lived in Panama. I had traveled when I was younger, like in my teen years. I had been to the States, I had been to Europe. So it's not like I was not exposed to other cultures. But this was my first time living away from home and really experiencing a different culture. And I clearly remember, getting on the bus to go to my school. And in that one bus, call it the train, call it the bus, there were people from the Philippines speaking in Tagalog. There were other Hispanic, Latin Americans speaking in Spanish. There were people clearly, because of their dresses, they were from Somalia. There were some Middle Eastern, all covered. There were so many people. So that was just on its own eye-opening of how many different cultures can coexist together. But what impressed me the most was not so much that. It was that there would be kids coming, going to school, and this was in the late 80s. So they had, the mohawks or the color all purple. There were punks. You got to put this into perspective because we're talking 30 plus years ago. Okay. And this is this Panamanian coming and seeing all these people. And what was very impressive to me is that no one looked down on them. No one looked like, purple hair or or black makeup. Now it's more common to see that. But 30 years ago, it wasn't. But no one looked down on anyone. And to me, that was so refreshing. I guess because I was coming from a culture where, you know, people tend to, they don't want to be looked down on. So they try to look the same, or they don't want to stand out in a bad way. And sometimes, and like in every country, even among Latin Americans, there is prejudice and there is racism, or more like classism. So people would look down on others like, oh, you serve tables, or you clean homes, or you just, so I was coming from that environment. And being here in Canada, in Toronto, seeing all these different cultures and seeing that no one looked down on everyone, seeing that I was renting a room in a house with a lady that cleaned instruments in the hospital and cleaned homes, and her husband was in construction. And those jobs in Latin America do not get paid well at all. Mm-hmm. So here they were making it, you know, making ends meet and paying their home, living right beside someone who was an accountant. And I know it sounds so common, like what's so different about that? But it wasn't common to me because, and this is, I guess, what I'm trying to say, that we take things for granted. And I think in Canada or in North America, we take for granted that you can make it regardless of your background, regardless of your upbringing. You can make it. You can start doing landscaping and own the landscaping company and, you know, have another career, other companies. In Latin America, the person that is born doing gardening will probably do gardening the rest of his life. And his kids probably will too, because the socioeconomical status or system does not allow so many people to progress, does not give them the opportunity. Salaries are very low, and not a lot of people that come from rural areas, they probably move to the city to do all these jobs like construction and cleaning and gardening, but they will stay doing that for the rest of their lives. And it's a vicious circle. So here I am, you know, I'm like, wow, here is a construction worker owning a home right beside an accountant. Where am I? I know it sounds silly, but I think it's important that everyone remembers, let's not take for granted what we do have in the places where we live, where anyone can get ahead despite of their background and upbringing and culture. That was my first thing when I moved to Canada.
That's such a great perspective. And like, you're so right. Like I never even thought to think of that because I haven't had an experience where I was brought up in that type of environment. So it's such a great perspective and insight for all of us, and just a great reminder to be grateful, and that, you know, we as Canadians and maybe Americans as well, we can do anything we want to do, where in other places it's not the case. So that's a great message. I love it.
Yeah, I think it comes back to assuming. And I like using that word a lot because it can go both ways. Right. We can assume that we understand or we know what other people are saying. We can assume that we know what they're thinking. We know their intentions. We can assume that other people understand or know what we want to do or we are thinking. And it's that communication and not casting broad assumptions. We shouldn't assume that not everybody who speaks Spanish is from Mexico, and not everybody that comes from an underdeveloped country is poor. So that it goes both ways, from moving into this culture to receiving people, welcoming people, from our interpersonal relationships to work. It's just it's a bigger principle that I think we should all really look into and make sure that we're not casting that broad, assumption for everyone.
Yeah, it's such a great thing to think about. So my question for you off of that is, were there assumptions made about you when you first came to Canada, or throughout your journey?
I don't think I experienced that when I came to Canada. When I was 19, maybe I was having too much fun being a young adult and meeting people, and first time away from my parents. I didn't have to ask permission from anyone.
Yeah.
But I do remember when we moved to the States, my husband was doing his master's degree. And at that time, we were a large family. It was, we have 5 kids. So we already had 5 kids then. And I remember that the neighbor right in front of me, we were getting to know each other. And I was telling her that in Panama, I had 2 maids. One was doing the cleaning and the other one was looking after the kids. And she just looked at me like you had 2 maids? I had to make the face because I was taken back. I was like, why was she looking at me like that? And it was like, of course, she was assuming that having help in your home is expensive. If you have someone, for, having a nanny for your kids, 6 days of the week, it's expensive. Having someone that cooks and cleans for you is expensive. It's not that expensive in other countries, but the way she looked at me made me feel like, how could you pay that? Right. How could you afford that? So I was like, that was probably one of the first times that I had experienced that. Right. But I think I've been fortunate enough to not have experienced a lot of racism. And, there's a few things, like when we moved here 10 years ago, my kids, were starting school. And everybody was telling them, oh, you speak Mexican, or you speak Spanish, you're from Spain. So things like that, but it wasn't such a big deal. I guess we've been fortunate. Other people have experienced a lot of racism and bullying because of their background. I think that because we were exposed to so many cultures growing up, and my kids and I were bilingual, I think that removed a layer of, from how other people view us. Mm-hmm. But it also, and this is something we've tried to teach our kids, we also understood where they were coming from. Again, it's the assuming, right? We understood it's okay, if someone has, this is all they've known in their lives, that's what they're going to assume. It is not their fault. Right. It's their surroundings. And I think it takes a lot from both ends to understand and rise above and just go like, it's okay. I understand where they're coming from. I'm not going to take it personally. Mm-hmm. It's not their fault. So I think it's both ends.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So my other question for you is why did you come to Canada? Why did you want to come here?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Whatever you want. Give me the long, give me the short. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I came to Canada because I had a boyfriend who had moved to Toronto.
Oh, okay.
That's why I came to Canada.
You're following a boy.
I was following a boy who is not the person I married, lucky. So, but at that time, I graduated before I was 17 from high school. So I had already done 2 years of university by the time I was 19. And he was moving. Panama was in the political turmoil. And a lot of Panamanians don't usually leave the country. We tend to stay. We don't tend to immigrate. Very few Panamanians you'll meet. But in the late 80s, there was a political turmoil. And there was this word, you're going to laugh at this, that Canada was paying $13 to pick fruit. And everybody was like, $13 an hour. It was like, what? Now you say $13, you can't live off $13 an hour.
Right.
But you would hear that and everybody was like, oh, I have to go. So there was this wave of people that tried to make it in Canada. I think probably 80% went back, but he was one of those. And I was in love. We had been dating for more than 2 years. I thought he was the love of my life. And I convinced my dad that I had to come to Canada to study. I was actually heading towards Florida, to Tallahassee. Tallahassee or Fort Lauderdale, one of those. And he said, no. And I said to him, no, it's Canada or nothing. And you can imagine how my dad was like, how do you dare to tell me that? Anyways, he told me I had to convince him. I had to prove to him that Canada was the place. And I thought I was very smart. So I found out that the Canadian dollar was worth less than the American dollars. We use American dollars in Panama. So what was, 9,000 in Canadian, it was like 6,500 in American. And, at all the living expenses and all that. So that was my proof. And he knew I had a boyfriend here, in Toronto, whom he didn't like at all. So I did pray a lot. I prayed a lot. And I had this comforting feeling telling me that it was going to be okay. It was going to work out. So with that prayer and that feeling, I went to my dad and I showed him the proofs, the numbers. Yeah. And he just said, okay. And that was it.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't think I would have done it for any of my kids.
Yeah.
But that's how I moved to Canada. That's why I moved to Toronto, and things worked out the way they had to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said that you actually had done 2 years of university before you came here. So what were you studying?
Interior design.
Oh, you were already in. Oh, yeah. So you have really loved interior design since you were like little. Like,
oh yeah. I was that kid that would rearrange the room entirely, consistently, change the bed, moved all the stuffed animals and all my little things and knickknacks that I had. I would take all my clothes out of the closet, put them all back in. I was that girl.
Oh my goodness.
Even when I was like in my tweens. Yeah.
I am that girl too. I love moving my room around. When I was little, I shared it with my little sister. And so I'd be like, are you okay if I just move this and like change everything?
Yeah.
So
we have that in common. My dad actually wanted me to be a lawyer because I would always argue with him. And I think I probably would have been a good lawyer, but that's what he wanted me to be. But he's been very supportive. I look back, he's been very supportive. And I told him I wanted to be an interior designer. And he always said, whatever you choose to be your best. Even if you choose to sell popsicles on the road, just be your best. And I think with that in mind, he was always very supportive if we had that mentality.
That's awesome. So what was it like for you knowing exactly what you wanted to do throughout your life journey?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it was when I was in high school, I always liked design, but I also liked fashion a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I was debating between fashion design and interior design. My dad did say that fashion designers didn't make it well in Panama, didn't make money in Panama. Mm-hmm. So I went into interior design and I loved it. I was really good at it when I started. Moved to Canada, did 3 more years, did really, really well. I always had in mind that I wanted to design restaurants and stores and hotels. So I wanted to go more into commercial. So I graduated and found an internship at this very good interior design company. So I think I was doing well, but then we moved to Panama and I thought I'll just continue doing interior design. But we moved to Panama with 1 kid. My husband was going to continue his studies. And things didn't work out the way I thought. So I went on my own and I was 24 at that time. I think it was too early in a very complicated field to go on my own. Okay. And I say complicated because you need to learn building codes. You need to have the contacts. You need to have the right people behind you, right contractors. But I went in too fast on my own and I quickly became disappointed because the quality of workmanship is not the same. And people are trying to cut corners. And I thought, this is not for me. I don't want to be chasing workers. I don't want to be chasing contractors. I just didn't enjoy that. So I think I went more into the business, the administration of the job, of the project, and left aside the creativity that I liked so much. So I sort of didn't look for alternatives. I just started doing real estate, which is another thing. My dad, he keeps coming back to our conversation a lot. So my dad he's a real estate investor. He believes in investing in real estate. So he said, do real estate. And we did that for a lot of years. And we've done other businesses, but we did that for a lot of years. And I think that gave me a foundation of what brings value to properties and what people go through when they're choosing, selecting, which is kind of the pre-stage of designing your home.
Right.
But so back to your question, how did I feel knowing that I want what I wanted to do from the beginning? I guess I knew, but, and I'm doing it now, but in the middle, before, from studying and doing it now, a lot of things went on that took me away from that field that I love so much. And it took me time to believe in myself again and bring me back to where I am. It took a few years, a lot of years.
So I've got a couple questions off this. So the first one is, like you said, your dad has come up a lot in this conversation so far. So I'm wondering if you could share with us maybe the best piece of advice that he gave you throughout your life so far.
Be the best you can be.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best thing. And I think I have a lot of him in me because he would talk to me a lot. Maybe because I'm the oldest, I don't know, but he's an entrepreneur. He's just had so many different businesses. Some have gone really well, some have not. Mm-hmm. He did not shy away from sharing those things with me. Maybe some parents might be embarrassed of saying, oh, this venture didn't go well, but he would just share. So I think I learned a lot from listening. I learned to believe that you can do whatever you want. There's a lot in between believing it and actually doing it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we need to push ourselves out of the comfort zone, because for me, I believed it, but it took me time to get to where I am because I had taken a different path. Sometimes it takes for us to look back and then connect the dots. But I recently heard that you cannot connect the dots ahead of you. You actually have to move and then look back and go like, okay, I see it. Mm-hmm. So believing and actually doing, it's good, but it takes getting out of your comfort zone. It takes effort, consistent, and actually acting out on what you believe for that first step, and then the second and the third. So I think more than what is something that he said is what he did that made an impact in me, which was sharing his ups and downs, his ideas, and what he was doing that created this person who I am when it comes to business and undertaking challenges and things like that.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that so much. It just makes me smile because I think that like everything you just said is such an important thing for others to hear as well. So I just think that's awesome. And I think you're so right that there's a lot of things that go into like believing you can do it and actually doing it. And I think one big thing is patience as well. Like it takes time. And I'm living through that right now because I'm like, can I just get to it? But I'm like, oh, I got to be patient. And it's like a constant reminder for me. But I just think that it's such an important message to hear. And the other thing I want to ask off of what you had last said was just, how did you start believing in yourself? What was kind of the steps that you took to start believing in yourself that you could do it?
As an interior designer,
yeah,
it took a lot of support from my husband. He was always telling me, Jessica, go back. Jessica, you love this. You have a passion. It was just like year after year of him telling that to me. I would always have the same answer, irrelevant. And there has been so many years. So the last time I did interior design, and this is probably going to date me, was 1996, 1995. And I started doing interior design again, probably 2018. So we're talking 1995 to 2018. That's like almost 23 years. That's a lot of years.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I would say to him, everything I learned is outdated. All the AutoCAD and all the technology is outdated. I don't have the contact. I mean, I had excuses after excuses after excuses. I really don't know why, to be honest with you. If I could go back, I would tell that Jessica, I would have a really good conversation with her. But it took years. So when we moved back here, my husband started, Jessica, go back at it, go back, go back. So I finally, so I did a couple of things. I just kind of put out myself and put an ad, had a couple of clients, but so it started to make me feel good. Like, okay, yeah, I guess I can do this again. But it wasn't until I hired a business coach. She really changed me when it comes to doing business and interior design. She really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I think I just had to close my eyes and do one step at a time and not think too much about it, not overthink it. I think I was overthinking everything. I think I was overthinking that I had to have a portfolio. People want to see your portfolio. That's one of the first things they ask. And I was overthinking. I don't have a portfolio, an updated one. I was thinking, I don't have the technology. I don't have the clients. I don't have the big clients. I don't have, the ostentatious home that people are going to go like, oh, she must be an interior designer. I didn't have that with me. And these were all excuses. So it was one step at a time. She told me, post in your Instagram account. And I was like, what am I going to post? Mm-hmm. So I posted. And then she said, do a live and then a Facebook live. And I'm like, what am I going to say? But I just put one foot forward. And that one step gave me the confidence that, okay, it's not so bad. And what I would do to push myself was to tell everybody. Like I would announce that on my Facebook or Instagram, I'm going live next week and I'm going to do it every week. And that gave me a commitment that actually put a lot of pressure in me. Mm-hmm. But I just sort of closed my eyes and said, okay, I got to do this and I'm going to figure it out. So it was one step at a time, but it was really pushing myself out of that comfort zone that we all like to stay in. Mm-hmm. So I think to answer that question, it was her just saying, my husband believing in me, supporting me, because without his support, I could not be here with you talking right now. Mm-hmm. And then a business coach that just told me things that I could do one step at a time, and then me actually doing it.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. I think a lot of people need to hear that message, especially today, that it's just one step at a time and you kind of got to do it scared. At the end of the day, there's never going to be a time that you feel like 100%. Even me starting this podcast, I was like, I'm not ready yet. I need to wait. Everything is not perfect. I overthought it, like overthinking 101 right here. It was like, the audio is not going to be perfect. The lighting's not going to be all the things, right? Yeah. And so I think that there's always a million excuses, but to just take one step toward your dream or what you really wanted to do every day will help you succeed and grow. So my one question for you is what would you tell your younger self? What would you tell your younger self?
Oh, do you know how many times I've told this to my kids and friends of my kids? So I guess it's what I would tell myself to, is to just don't wait until things are perfect and be courageous enough to make mistakes. What's the worst that can happen? If you make a mistake, you learn from that.
Yeah.
And then you have more information to make your next step. But if you stay here where you don't want to make a mistake, you failed. Mm-hmm. You're afraid to fail. But by staying here in this comfort zone, you're still failing because you're not learning anything. Mm-hmm. So to learn, to progress, we really have to make mistakes. So embrace mistakes, embrace them. And if you fear mistakes, then just to take one small step. But taking that one small step will for sure give you the confidence to take another small step. And maybe in 10 small steps, your 11th is a little bit bigger. But that confidence will build, with time. It is in making mistakes that we learn how we can do better for the next one. And that's what I learned. And I keep learning. Mm-hmm. Every week, every single thing or idea that I have or project, I learn. And are they all successful? Not at all. But I learned. Mm-hmm. If I'd never, like this year, I decided I'm going to make webinars every month and I'm going to invite people to my program. That was my north when I started the year. And I did one in January, February, March. And every time I would get 10 people subscribed. My first webinar, no one showed up. Not a single soul. I was like, okay, so I started to pick myself up and say, I learned and I at least have the webinar recorded and I learned, right? You gotta pat yourself in the back and motivate yourself. And then second webinar, 15 people subscribed. No one showed up. I was like, okay, here we go again. Third one person showed up. Anyways, but if I had never, and then I quit, I didn't do more webinars. I started doing challenges and boot camps and conference, which have gone so much better than the webinars. But if I had never done those 3 webinars, could I be telling you today that the challenges have worked better for me? Probably not, because I would have never found out. I would have never learned that that's probably not the way my audience connect with me. They connect with me more when I have a challenge, a boot camp, a conference, and and even I just finished one last week and I learned again. So making mistakes is scary, but it is worth it. Everything we learn is worth it because now you have one more piece of information for that next step.
Yeah, that's
what I would tell myself.
You took the next question, right? I was like, can you give us an example of a mistake you made? But you just answered it already. So you're like ahead of the game, thinking ahead. So that it is so true. I think it's like you have to see what works and what doesn't work. But if you never put it out there, you don't know, right? So I know. Yeah, I think that's an incredible example. Yeah, that's awesome. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about your family. You have 5 kids. That's crazy.
I do. So they range from almost 18 to 27. So 17 to 27 currently. And I have 4 boys and 1 girl right in the middle.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm from a family of 4 kids, so I can only imagine it was probably a little bit crazy at times.
It was, but I love them all. And I had a very funny conversation with one of them, actually my youngest, asking me who was my favorite. And I was like, how could you even ask me that as a mom? Every mother has a favorite. And I'm like, no. I have 5 favorite spots in my heart and you each have one. But anyways, it's been a fun ride and I've learned a lot as a mom for sure. And yeah, I would not trade it for anything. It's been a fun ride.
That's awesome. So what's one of the greatest challenges you've experienced with your family, and what did you learn from it as well?
Greatest challenge, letting my kids make their own mistakes. Here's that word again, mistakes. I think as parents, you don't want your kids to suffer. You don't want your kids to make mistakes. You can, because of your experience and your age and things you've lived, sometimes you can see ahead. You can see, you think you can see ahead, you think you know what's best, and you think you understand, you know, how things should go. And so when and you sort of manage your kids, you know, for the first 10, 11 years of their lives, and sometimes even less, but you're managing their lives. You're deciding what school they go to, you approve of friends or not, you give them permission to go to sleepovers or parties, right? You are managing their lives, you take them places. And all of a sudden, these kids that you've controlled your life, they start growing up. And they start telling you, no, I don't want to be friends with your friends' kids. I don't have to be their friends. And I don't like the clothes you buy for me anymore. Or I don't want to study that. I don't want to go to school. You know, I don't want to do soccer anymore, piano, you know. And you're like, what? You know, it's shocking. As a parent, it is shocking. So, you know, you kind of expect it, but the minute your kids start making major mistakes, bigger ones, not just, I don't want to play piano anymore. You know, others like, I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to, you know, things that you know are going to impact their lives in a bigger scale. You're like, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But letting your kids make mistakes is probably one of the biggest lessons any parent can learn. We have to let them be. We can't be helicopter parents. And so the lesson to learn side by side with this one is to love them unconditionally. Because one thing is to let them make mistakes, and you're like, oh, this hurts, you know? And another thing is to just really love them despite them making choices that you were not expecting. Because as parents, we have expectations. My parents had expectations of me, I'm sure. And I have expectations. Your parents, your listeners, we all do. Even if you don't have kids, you're thinking of this perfect family. You know, my kids are going to be this and that, and I'm going to teach them, and I'm going to show them what I did wrong so they don't do the same thing, right? You probably will tell your kids, don't wait until you're perfect. Just start your dream, because that's what you lived.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're a parent, and then you're seeing your kids that they're afraid to make mistakes, or they don't want to get started until they have everything perfect. And you're like, listen to me. But so it comes back to the other side of that coin. It's really, really loving them, despite them making all the different decisions, despite they doing things that you did not expect. Getting to that place of pure love, unconditional love, is not easy. But I think that's where we all need to be, regardless of our relationships. That brings you peace. That really brings you peace as a parent. So that would be probably the biggest lesson I've learned from raising 5 children that are all different, same upbringing, same parents, but they all have different personalities. And like I've said, it's been a very fun ride.
That's awesome. That's so good to hear. And I love that you talk about love. I just think that you're right. It's so important. And me, as a child still that lives with my parents and everything, I am like, I can just like hear what you're saying. And I'm like, I think they do the same thing. I'm like, because I just recently decided not to go back to school. And I was like, I can't imagine what it's like for them to hear that. Like that would probably like, it just makes sense when I'm talking to you. They're probably like, oh my gosh, this is like big news, but you know, they still continue to love me. So I think that it gives me a lot of comfort as well. So I think that all parents, that's like a very good piece of advice, as my parents have done the same for me. So I think that's awesome. So thank you for sharing that. I want to talk about your business now a little bit.
Oh.
So you said that you really started to get back into interior design in 2018. So kind of walk us through your entrepreneurial journey and what that was all about.
So I think I've always been an entrepreneur. So I'm going to answer this in two parts.
Okay.
Perfect. My entrepreneurial journey and my current business.
Okay.
And I say I've always been an entrepreneur because even when I was in grade five, I remember clearly going to the pharmacy next to my school and buying 3 erasers for $25, and then going back to school and selling them, each one for 25 cents.
Oh my
And
God.
people would buy them. And my dad was an accountant, a tax advisor for a company that sold little packages of, do you know those packages that you dip the popsicle?
Yes.
What are those called?
I have no idea, but there's some sort of candy. Yeah.
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 So they made those, they manufactured those. So my dad would buy the big bags and I would sell them in school. And I was in grade 5. Then I was in grade 7 or 8, and this boy band, Menudo, which you might have heard of not, but talking early 80s, mid 80s. So I was probably grade 8, grade 9. And my dad, I'm just laughing. I know sometimes I've said his name. He printed these posters and I sold them. I would sell them. So I've always had this entrepreneurial mind. We went back to Panama. We started our own real estate business. I wasn't an agent under brokerage. We started our own business. We created our path. We've had a language company that we had open for years. And we started doing trade missions of business companies from Canada that wanted to do business in Panama. So that entrepreneurial journey, I think, started when I was very young. Mm-hmm. And I think that has created in me the mind that, I like being my own boss.
Yes.
Not everybody will be comfortable because it's not an easy journey. You don't get a paycheck every month. Although you should, if you listen to the pros, they tell you pay yourself first. But that's not always the case. So being an entrepreneur is hard, and you have to be very self-motivated. No one is asking you to punch in and punch out. Mm-hmm. No one is telling you, you haven't handed in this report or evaluating your performance. So being an entrepreneur requires self-motivation and a lot of discipline and a lot of self-care too, because you got to take care of yourself as well. So that has been my entrepreneurial journey since I was little. Now bringing it to where I am now, it's been very, very interesting, and I've loved every minute of it. I cannot say that I have made it big, that I'm in the magazines or in the news. No, but I have learned so much. And I've learned so much about creating a niche, talking to a specific audience, honing your message, being yourself, imposter syndrome. That's a big one. That's what we were talking about. Making mistakes, like we said, managing time. I mean, I could go on and on about things that I've learned. Social media. I mean, I'm here now, like doing reels and lives.
I have to jump in. What's your Instagram handle? Can you tell everyone?
Is it interiors_by_Jessica? So interiors by Jessica with an underscore in between.
Awesome. Yeah, you got to go follow her. Like, her content is so good. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, when the reels first came out, not very many people were like dipping their toe in it and trying it, but you were, and I was so impressed. I loved seeing it. And your content is so good. And I know you have a specific niche, but I'm going to put it in the episode notes as well. So make sure you go and follow her, because her content is so good and she consistently shows up. Like, I can say that you consistently show up. So
I do.
I do. Give you a little plug there.
Thank you. It's been a fun ride. I mean, talk about learning.
Yeah.
Talk about putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone. And it's not easy because, I think probably what I would say here is that when you're putting yourself out there, when you're a business owner and you talk to your audience, you talk to the people you want to serve, But sometimes we think too much about your friends who are listening, or other designers in my case, who might be, checking into your account, or providers. And you think, oh, they already know this. Why would I even say this? But I have to remind myself constantly, I'm not talking to them.
Yeah.
I'm talking to those who need me, those who want to hear my message.
Yeah.
But that's what I said about self-motivation. To bring yourself back and say, hey, this is who you're talking to. Yeah. And sometimes we think that, everybody knows this, but if you talk to me about how to do podcasts and the storytelling, you probably go like, yeah, that's so obvious. And I'm like, no, it's not. This is valuable to me. How to make jewelry, all the beautiful things you do. So if I have to put myself back and remind myself that not everybody knows what I'm talking about. And someone there needs to hear what I say. Mm-hmm. But that has to be I have to be right in front of my face when I'm creating content. Because it's really, really easy to fall in that space where you're going to feel judged by others. So easy.
Yeah, let's talk about this a bit, because I think the fear of judgment from others is huge. It's humongous. Like, so for me, I'll tell a little bit about my Instagram. So for me, I never posted on my personal page. I had a business page for my jewelry, but my personal page, I never posted on it because I was so afraid of what people would say about me or think about me. And I would feel completely fine to post everything about my life on my business page because I knew the people there were so supportive and there for a reason. And so I had to really push myself to be like, just start posting, because it's going to help someone. It's going to, and it was hard because there's all those thoughts of, what about that one kid who was in my math class? What are they going to think, So I personally struggled with, and still do, with the judgment of others. When I put content out, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? What are they? And it's a very ugly trap in a lot of ways, in my opinion, because it kind of like, it can stop you from doing a lot. It stopped me for a lot of time to not put things out there because I was so afraid of what others would think. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what you think about that.
First of all, I think we all suffer from that, regardless of our ages. Adults do, professionals do. We all want to portray this perfect image, that everything is going well, that you have it all figured out, whether it's in your personal life, family, or even your business. The reality is that I don't think anyone is. I think everyone is figuring things out in their own bubble and circumstances. I think we need to be a lot kinder to each other. A lot kinder, and even to ourselves, which kind of takes a full circle to what we were talking at the beginning about assuming. We tend to assume so much. We tend to assume that we know what's happening in someone else's life because everything looks really good on their Instagram feed. We tend to assume that people are going to judge us, and the truth is that they won't. Like I was so scared of letting people know that I was going to do interior design, because I thought my friends were going to say, who does she think she is doing interior design? Yeah. And I don't think anyone thought that. I think some people were surprised because they just didn't know. Yeah. Not because they were saying, who does she think she is? Right. So yeah, I think it's back and forth. It's from the viewers and the listeners to us, and we need to be kinder to ourselves. And I know I said this before, and it kind of sounds very simple, but it's what works for me. I just close my eyes and I do it. We overthink too much. We want to be perfect. We're afraid to make mistakes. We have this imposter syndrome, but it's just us judging ourselves, no one else.
Yeah, I know that we're a lot harder on ourselves than others are. And you're right, the overthinking piece really does have a big play in it as well. Because we're like, what if it comes off the wrong way? And then there's a million different thoughts that come with it. So I think that you're right in what you had said, and that's awesome. But I want to let you get back into your entrepreneurship journey of right now. So
I do provide interior design services for anybody who relates to my message, but my specific niche is for first-time homeowners. I think because I come from that real estate background and I understand what happens before they take possession, and I understand what happens after, that I relate to them. I relate to with anyone who has these big dreams and they want, anybody. I think anybody who's ever bought a home or will buy a home will relate to the fact that you buy your new home, usually your first home, with all these expectations and all these dreams, and you have all these plans, and you most likely always clipping these pictures and screenshotting them on their phone, saving them on Pinterest. It's just the most normal thing to do. But what happens is that once they take possession, reality hits. And it hits hard because now you have payments, mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, plus all the utilities and all the things that just life throws at you. Mm-hmm. So what happens is a lot of people, and I've met with a lot of first-time homeowners, they just put those dreams on hold because you need to keep up with payments. That's just normal. But those dreams, if you don't take action with intention, they stay there, and they will. And what happens is that, here you are into a year of owning your home. You look at walls and you go like, oh, I should put something up. And then you buy something because you've been in your home and you realize it's not where I wanted it to be. What do I do? But those decisions are not planned. They're based on sales, promotions. They're based on, when you go to HomeSense and you're like, oh, this looks good. And they start buying things without a plan. So then there comes the frustration. And a lot of people have these limiting beliefs that I'm not good at decorating. And when they make those decisions that are not planned, that belief is reinforced. See, I knew I wasn't good. I shouldn't have done it. And then they stay here. Yeah. Or people would say, it's too expensive. Beautiful homes are expensive. I can't afford it. And they don't even find out how much it is. They just believe that it's expensive and they can't afford it. Others would say, this is not my forever home. So why mad? Why bother? Or I have kids, or, I could go on and on. So those beliefs keep our dreams here and keep us from taking action. So I'm encouraging everyone to take action. Just be intentional. If you feel you don't know, learn. If you are afraid of the cost, that you can't afford it, find out how much it is. If you're afraid of, how it's going to look because you don't even know where to start, find out how you can start. But that's what I mean about being intentional, which translates to everything in our lives, because this is our home. But when we talk about dreams and goals and careers and family, limiting beliefs will keep us down. It will keep us from believing things that would take us to feelings, to actions, to no results. So my primary message is to take action. Don't let those dreams stay in the dream department. You just have to plan them. Yeah. Whether that dream takes you a year, 3 years, 5 years, but you got to take that step. Mm-hmm. If you don't, 1 year, 3, 5 years are going to pass and you're still going to be here. So if you plan it, you'll eventually get there. And that planning can be adjusted to your budget, your timeline, your know-how, your everything, but it will move you forward. So I want people to move forward and not be afraid of cost or know-how. Just do it. Even if it's that one wall, that happy wall, that one corner in your room, because I do know the impact that our surroundings have in their lives. I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. When I hear other people selling their services and selling, I don't know, thousands and millions, I go like, oh, it's because they're making someone else, better their business or make money or save time. And then sometimes I think maybe people think that our physical spaces are not as important. Maybe people believe that, this is more artificial, the pretty home, the pretty living room, the pretty things. So I remind myself and I remind your listeners that undoubtedly our homes have a direct impact on the way we feel, from where we wake up, how we relax, how we re-energize, how we connect. If you're someone that loves to be social and loves to have people and you're embarrassed of your home, you're not going to invite anyone because you're embarrassed. So you're not living your life to the fullest. If you are someone that needs to have a space that it's clean or, relax because you have anxiety and that gives you anxiety, if you don't create that space for you, you're not helping yourself. So self-care begins at home, and our home should take care of us, not the other way around. But it takes action with intention to get there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I completely will second that. Like, if I've got clothes that need to be put away and they're just sitting there, every time I walk in the room, I'm looking at those clothes and I'm like, they need to be put away. And I know that when my room is clean and when I have the clothes put away, there's way less clutter in my mind as well, because it's like one less thing I have to do. So I definitely agree that it's so important what your environment looks like and what it makes you feel like too. And it affects you. So yeah, I definitely think I agree with that.
Good. Yeah. It's my north right now. It's the vision that I have for me, for other people. And I'm not excluding myself of those beliefs. What motivated me the most from going to this route is that I myself, when I bought my first home, I had so many dreams and things I wanted to do. I just didn't believe that I could do it one step at a time. I wanted to go big or go home. And as an interior designer, I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. But that belief just kept me there because time kept passing by. And 5 years passed and I had not done what I had envisioned. And then that's when we decided to move to Canada, sold our home, did renovations, but I didn't enjoy them. My buyer did. And I was like, why did I wait? Why do we wait? Yeah. I could have enjoyed so many things, even if it was just one wall, the next one, and so forth.
No, yeah, that's so true. Like this wall behind me, this area, this was the first thing I did. And it was one of the only things that was actually done. So this side of my room on the other side was actually never fully completed. And that's why a lot of people never see that side. And I did not like that because I'm the type of person that wants it all to look good. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I had to be patient and like try different things. And then I didn't like things. And then it's like, yeah, it's just like, it's okay to not have the whole room put together because often it's not. And I just think that's a fun disclaimer that like this pretty wall behind you, it's not all that way all the time, right?
That's okay, but that motivates you. And that wall might be enough to bring some happiness to your face because you look at it and you're like, I love my wall.
Yes, every time. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So I think that's so awesome. So where can people get in contact with you if they're interested in learning more about you?
So I have a website, interiorsbyjessica.ca for Canada. and of course on Instagram is I think where most of the fun happens, interiors_by_Jessica. I have some free guides if you want to know how to accessorize your home, how to use curtains, rugs, artwork, how to hang it right, scale and all that. It's a free guide. And I also have a free guide for a self-care home. It kind of takes you on this journey to design your home based on self-awareness, bringing joy where you matter in your space. So it's a really, really good guide that kind of was born from a self-care home conference that I hosted in June. or July. So the guides are free. I have live conversations almost every week, and there's lots to learn. I really want to empower people to take those steps with confidence.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so do you want to share anything else before we go to the final 4 questions?
Oh, I just love what you're doing.
Oh,
I love it. I love it. I love hearing other people's stories. I think there's so much to learn from listening to others and being inspired. And sometimes we just need to know that we're not alone, that other people don't believe in themselves and are afraid, and other people don't want to make mistakes, but they did it. And I think there's so much value in learning from each other that I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And I obviously think it's equally important that we can really learn from each other. And also the biggest thing you said is the not feeling alone, because I feel like a lot of us have all felt like we're alone, but in reality, there's lots of people who have experienced the same thing. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's do our last 4 questions. You kind of answered some of them throughout, but that's okay if there's a little repetition. So the first one is, what is some of the best advice you've ever received, and from whom?
I'm gonna come back to the more recent one, okay, because I have a few, but I've heard from Marie Forleo, who said, "Start before you're ready." And just start, just get going with those dreams. Don't wait until you have it all figured out and perfectly. Just take one step.
Yeah.
And that one step will give you the confidence to the next one, but it takes one step.
Yes. I love it. I love it. And I always think of like this one quote as well, as like, what if it turns out way better than you ever imagined? And I just think it's such a good one. It goes really great with that quote as well. So that's
love it.
One.
I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah. Okay. What the second one is, what is some of the worst advice you've received?
Going to go back to when I was 16.
Okay.
And I don't think it was ill-intentioned at all, but at 16, I wanted to change religions. My parents are devout Catholics, and I wanted to change religions, and they were very upset at me. In fact, that boyfriend I mentioned to you, he's the one who introduced me to, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so he introduced me, and I really, really connected, and I wanted to change religions. And so I had this one person, I don't think I even knew him very well. He said, things were very chaotic when my parents found out. And this person said, just go back to how things were and pretend everything is the same. And I was 16, and I did. So for 3 years, until I moved to Canada, I pretended to be someone I was not. So I pretended to go to church with my parents, and pretended to, be, a good daughter. Yeah. But inside of me, I would attend these meetings, and I just knew that that was not me. Yeah. And so for 3 years, I practically lied to them. Yeah. Pleasing them. But I think when they found out 3 years later that I wanted to make an official change, they were shocked. Of course they were, right? For 3 years, they believed that everything was back to normal. Yeah. So I think that was probably the worst advice, not ill-intentioned, like I said. I think the best advice would have been just be honest with them, and just wait until you're older, until you're of age, and just let them know. But it would have eased the path, and I would not feel that I lied to them.
And it's always a good thing to be yourself, which
yes, absolutely.
When you can't express yourself in the way that you want to, it's very difficult. Yeah, so yes. I think that's actually a very interesting answer to that question. A lot of people have like a hard time answering it, but I really love that, like the direction you took it in. So that's a great answer. Okay. So next question is, what advice would you give your younger self or someone in the younger generation?
Oh, we've touched a lot about this, but I think if I could go back to when I was, 24 and I abandoned interior design, I would have just go back and said, you know what? It didn't go as the way you thought. Look for alternative solutions. Instead of abandoning your dream, look for different ways of doing it. Analyze what went wrong.
Yeah. And
really think and ask for advice and look for coaching. You don't need to do it alone. Mm-hmm. But when things don't go the way you think they should go, if we just abandon it altogether, I think we just need to go back and say, okay, what went wrong? Mm-hmm. And what could I have done better? I think I probably would have told that to my 24-year-old self. I would have said, yeah, you didn't expect interior design to go like that in Panama. You had all these dreams. That's okay. You learned. Let's sit down and let's analyze what could you have done better? Yeah. Because I could have been doing interior design for 20 years. Do I regret not having it done? Or do I regret the real estate path and everything I learned? I don't, because we did learn a lot.
Yeah.
But I think I would have been wiser to just evaluate the whole situation.
Right.
And instead of just, I don't like it. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what I would tell myself.
That is awesome. Okay, my last question for you is one of my favorite as well, is what are you grateful for?
Oh boy. I would have to say my faith. I am very grateful for the relationship I have with God. I think that has the one thing that has changed my life. My personal relationship with Him. Mm-hmm. Because from that, everything else is born. Like my relationship with my husband, with my children, how I communicate with them, how I try to understand and forgive and ask for forgiveness and change and want to change. And from the way I have carry on relationships with them and with strangers, the power that I have from moving on and getting up again. And even every morning, I think that all comes back to the relationship I have with my Father. For me, it's my Father in heaven. And that to me I am grateful for that. I grew up having a different opinion of what that relationship was. And once I understood that it could be personal, it changed my life. And it changed it. Like I said, everything else comes from that, from right. the way how I think about myself to how I relate to others.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy with that. Like, that's awesome. I'm glad that is something that you decided to speak about, because I do think that it's an important thing. As when we're aligned with our higher power, I think that there's a lot of great things to come. So thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure. You have gone beyond all expectations. This has been a phenomenal interview and conversation. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor talking to you and to your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was such an amazing conversation. And I loved hearing all about your life, your upbringing, all the traveling you did, and everything in between. It was such an amazing conversation, and I feel motivated and uplifted after all of our awesome conversations. So if you have a story that you would like to share, please reach out to me. You can message me on all platforms, and that is all down below in the episode notes. So thank you so much for supporting me, and I hope you